Okay, this will be the fourth fireside chat, and it's going to be a little more personal in terms of my encounter with the Diagnostic and Statistic manual and the Freudian approach to psychotherapy. In my value quest to understand what was the difficulties people had, I went to seminary, and at the seminary there was a professor who was the leading pastoral care person in the United States. His name was Dr. Wayne Oates, and Dr. Oates suggested, after he saw my interest in psychotherapy, that I go and work at a mental hospital, the LaGrange Mental Hospital in LaGrange, Illinois. On Saturday mornings, I was a volunteer there, and he believed that the chaplain there could do excellent work with me in teaching me the Diagnostic and Statistic manual. And so this Dr. Barton assigned me to a man by the name of Otto and told me to come up with a diagnosis. I had purchased the Diagnostic Statistic manual in that era. I think it was the second Diagnostic and Statistic manual. So I began to analyze. I'd spend an hour and a half, 2 hours with Otto, and then I would talk with the nurses, the doctors about Otto, and get a picture in my mind. I did not ask for how they had diagnosed him, because that was supposed to be my learning. So I would report to Dr. Barton the following week with what my analysis was. I recall one time he had grabbed a nurse sexually, and so one of my diagnoses was that he had a major sexual issue. Another time he was depressed. I would put him under the category of severe depression. And I would go into Dr. Barton each week, and he would tell me what I had done wrong and said, no, that's not the diagnosis. So I did this probably for 45 weeks, going systematically through the Diagnostic and Statistic manual and being told each week that I was wrong. Now this was a bruise on my ego, because before that I'd always done very well in school, and here I was getting a failing grade each Saturday morning with Dr. Barton. Finally, on the last session, he told me I was wrong, and I was leaving, and I said, by the way, what was the diagnosis for Otto? And he says he has Alzheimer's disease. He has the organic brain disintegration. So with that, I went to the University of Chicago to study with the next great person in terms of pastoral care and get advanced material on psychology. I was there for 2.5 to 3 years, and in my third year, I decided to take a course in psychoanalysis from Bruno Bettelheim. Bruno Bettelheim had been in Vienna with Freud, and Freud knew his family quite well. And Bettelheim had picked up on psychoanalysis. He came from a family that was not medically trained. And Bettelheim was a very mean teacher. He did not abide with anybody making dumb comments in his class. In fact, he would tell them to get the hell out of graduate school, that they couldn't make it. But he would show movies, and I would risk my life, my future, and tell him what I saw in the movie. Now, he really liked what I said, and he never treated me badly, which I'm very grateful for. But he showed me that through his class I learned that I was not really interested in theology anymore. I was tired of studying what people had come up with in the past. Psychology was a living, vital, psychoanalysis was vital. It tried to find out about people from live human beings, not through some ancient sacred book. So I had a degree from seminary as a pastor, so I went into the pastorate. And for the next dozen years, I had access to people's homes, and I listened. And I also was reading all these volumes written by Freudian descendants. And as I listened, my ears were attuned to what was basic human nature. What were people striving with? What were the wounds that were left over from childhood? I did not try to do therapy very well because people didn't look at a pastor for long-term therapy. They looked for advice. And while I knew advice wouldn't work, and I had tried it for a number of times, I decided that advice just wasn't the way to go. And so I kept listening. And then finally, in the mid-70s, I began to study to become an analyst. I could not become a psychoanalyst because I did not have a medical degree. At that time, only doctors were allowed in. About 10 years later, they let clergy in also to study. But by that time, I had an analyst degree in transactional analysis. And so in about 1972, I had groups and saw individuals and couples in a longer-term therapy approach. So for the rest of that century, and now we're in the edge of 2014, I have listened and I have tried to help and have benefited of, actually have helped people, I'm a little shy to say that, with the material that I learned from Freudian descendants and from the material I developed with my analyst wife, Dix Gescheidel Morris. And this will end the fourth lecture, and I will go to part of the way we developed a system.